The Democrats. Okay, guys.
You're welcome.
Thank
you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for coming and welcome. This is really a nice crowd. I'm going to warn you now, I have allergies, so if I start coughing, I am not sick. Because I know nowadays everybody is like totally paranoid, so. Anyway, we'd like to start the meeting with an acknowledgement. We, the Fidalgo Democrats, acknowledge that we gather on indigenous land, the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Samish and Swinomish people, and pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. If you are not on our mailing list, be sure to sign in the back and put down your email and your phone number. Please be careful to write so we can read it. I always say write best handwriting, so that helps. Okay, before we go further, please turn off your cell phones. And if you don't know how to turn it off, ask your neighbor. Right. The front door of the library is locked, so when you come and go, you have to go from that door or this one over here. And the bathrooms are around the corner in the back, if anybody needs to use them. We also have wonderful cookies in the back. Rita Sullivan, thank you again. Yay! There's also some coffee and tea, if anybody would like that. It's decaf. And I'll kind of tell a little about the Fidalgo Democrats. We're an independent democratic association with a focus on education. I want to remind everyone that we are not a PAC. We cannot endorse candidates or contribute to their campaigns. We do invite Democratic candidates to talk about issues and legislation. And if you want to contribute to candidates, we encourage you to go to their websites. We don't charge dues, but we do pass the hat at some point. And we, as a steering committee, have donated money to several different groups, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the World Central Kitchen. We also volunteer at the Brick Dinner, which is at the Presbyterian Church. And we really recently donated to CDC, Community to Community, to assist with the costs for Alfredo Lido and other immigrants. So we do try to use the money for things that we feel are worthwhile causes. And if people have ideas or suggestions, that's great too. Okay, the meeting is being recorded. Where is Colton? There he is. Oh, Rita's back there. Well, Shay is recording it, all right. I think Colton is the one who set it up for you. And he's a high school student, and he has been helping us with our YouTube channel and Facebook. He's young and great at that stuff. He also, just as, he's not here, but he was the Anacortes student who won a state debate title. And he's an amazing guy. He's just done so many wonderful things. And we're really lucky that he's interested in helping us out. So I just want to give him a little shout out too. And so that, and we hopefully next month we'll have a slideshow with John Jansen's pictures. He gives me the little thing to put in the computer, but we've got to have help with that. So anyway, our next meeting is June 10th, and we're going to be focused on the dangers of fires and wildfires and what's being done to decrease the risk. It's something that's come up a lot as we've had fires throughout the country, but also in this area as well. And so before I introduce the speakers, I'd like to ask if there's any elected officials, and I think there are a few running around this room. So I'd like you to stand up, please, and introduce yourself. And I will, if you need, I will give you the microphone.
Thank you. It's great to see such a good turnout. I'll be brief. We have a lot of good information to learn tonight from our three excellent speakers. I'm Carolyn Moulton. I'm currently serving my second term as an Anacortes City Council member, and I am very grateful to have the opportunity to run for a third term. Thank you. I've learned so much in my first 2 terms, and being in council chambers, being on council committees, public works, planning, finance, being on different boards of organizations like Community Action, Skagit Transit, the Skagit Marine Resources Committee, Friends of the Anacortes Forest Advisory Board, and what I'm really excited about is listening and learning and continuing to evolve as a council member and just be better and better at my job. And you can help me do that by asking me questions, reaching out to me, and I would really appreciate your support. I do have an opponent this year, this cycle, and so I encourage you to do your research and reach out to me, please, anytime, because I'm more than happy to talk. So thanks very much for welcoming me.
Well, we have Ryan Walters and Ron Wesen here, so I think they'll introduce themselves when we're doing the... Is there anyone else that I'm missing? Sometimes when I look around, I miss people. Where is Bonnie? Oh, there's Bonnie. I missed you. Okay, so there's Bonnie as well. So those are our 3 speakers, and I'll let them introduce. Is there any other elected official here? PCOs for the Democratic officials? PCO, Rita's a PCO, Philippe. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. I want to thank Don Ambrose, who edits the Skagit Democrats newsletter, which comes out weekly. If you're interested in that, get on their website. It's great. And he really covers a lot of what's going on. Carol and Rich Tamler edit the Whitby newsletter, and that's great too, especially if you're in the 10th. They really cover what's going on. We have a Facebook page now, the Fidalgo Democrats. Thank you, Shay and Colton, and that's been really helpful. So if anyone does Facebook, that's good. I'm going to mention a few things. There's so much going on at the back of the table has all kinds of information and articles and just stuff going on. So if you have time and want to look at a few things, I put some notes there, sticky notes, so if there's something that, a phone number or something you want, please feel free. I want to mention that we have ongoing rallies from 12 to 1 on Wednesday and on Sunday. And everyone is welcome, and you can bring your signs and stand there and wave your signs. So that is always fun. There's another thing I wanted to mention about ICE. We've had speakers talking about that, and what they've recommended is if you see something happening, to take down the vehicle number, the name of the vehicle, see if you can get the name of the person. What they don't want you to do is get involved, physically involved with that. And there is a phone number if you feel you wanted to call up. It's 844-724-3737. Okay. I also typed up a few of the resources on the back. There's just a really lot going on. I do want to mention that the Skagit Democrats have their gala on June 7th, and you can go online and get tickets. They're asking you to pick a meal as well. Chicken, salmon, or vegetarian. And there's information in the back about Northwest Labor Council. So if you're interested in the labor movement, there's also information about community, that they have a training session if people want to do some tabling with them and get more information about what's going on with ICE. So those are some of the things that are going on, and that's the tip of the iceberg, really. There's just so much. One of the things that people are being asked to do is call Governor Ferguson if you have any issues or concerns, especially if you have concerns about Homeland Security, to call him and ask him to intervene if he can. I think that's all I'm going to say now, but I could go on, and we need to move along here. So, Is there anything else that anyone absolutely has to say right at the moment? All right, we're going to move along then. We have some wonderful speakers, as you know. We're very lucky today to have people coming. The focus of and the reason we invited the folks was there's a lot of concern about the federal cuts and what's going on at the federal level with how that impacts the states and the local governments, the city, the port, the county, and what we can do as citizens and what they're going to be doing to try to help keep services going. So that's kind of the focus of how are they dealing with these cuts. And we feel these three people would really be able to tell us what's going on. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to ask you, do you prefer to introduce yourselves? You're more than welcome to. I think a lot of people know who you are.
I say yes.
It's Ryan Walters, who is going to be our next mayor. And there's Ron Wesen, who also, you're not running soon. I think you won recently. Is that true? Okay, good. So you have to run again for a while. And Bonnie Bowers, and she's from the port. So, okay, why don't you folks come on up? And Ryan is going to has a PowerPoint, and I don't think Ron and Bonnie do right now. So, does anybody have a preference about who wants to go first?
The man with the PowerPoint.
Oh, the person with the PowerPoint. Okay. So Ryan, I have a bibliography about you. Do you want me to read that, or do you want to talk about yourself? No. Okay. Ryan grew up in Anacortes, where his family has lived for 5 generations. He went to college in upstate New York and law school in California, studied abroad and traveled, but always felt a calling back to Anacortes and Fidalgo Island and a deep connection to both the land and community. After graduating, Ryan joined the Skagit County Prosecutor's Office, where he served for nearly a decade before moving to management of the County Planning Department as an assistant director, then to Samish as planning director. For the last 3 years, Ryan has been in private practice, working with local governments to improve the permit process and municipal codes. He is the principal author of the forthcoming state guidebook on how to process building and land use permit applications. He ran for city council in 2011, and I don't know how many people remember this, but there was a proposed water bottling plant, and some of us remember that, so thank you for fighting that. And he remains in Anacortes. He has a wife and a new baby. So I'll leave it at there and now turn over to Ryan. Here you go.
Thank you, Barbara. Give me just a second here to get the projector working. All right. Well, thank you for the invitation to present today. I have a few slides. This should only take about 90 minutes. We have, not all the information about what's happening. I don't think anybody has all the information about what's happening, but probably there are 3 spheres of things that we need to be thinking about. One is inflation, obviously. The other is economic contraction. And then finally is some of the chaos and unpredictability that we have in our economy and the federal government right now. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a primer about the city of Anacortes' budget. The city budget is basically wrapped around 3 revenue sources. One is general revenue, which I'll break down into 3 subsources. Another is a variety of small revenue sources that I'll talk about in a minute. And then the third are utility fees, the utility rates that you pay on water, wastewater, those kinds of things. So when we talk about the things that the City of Anacortes does, general revenue is what funds your police department and your fire department, at least the fire side of the fire department. General revenue is what pays for courts and all those internal services, HR, IT, finance, the city attorney's office, the finance department, the things that provide service to the other internal departments of the city, but also your library and your museum, your parks department, your city council, and very much most importantly, the mayor's office. So that's all general revenue, and we'll dive a little bit more into that in a minute. But some of the other services, your permitting in the planning department, those kinds of things, that's paid for in part, not completely, by the fees that you pay when you apply for a permit. Similarly, our medical service, which is provided by our firefighters, that EMS side of it is paid for in part by medical transports, ambulance transports, and the county EMS levy, which provides money to the city. Thank you very much, by the way. Recreation, the recreation side of the Parks Department, you do pay fees to pay for some of that stuff, so some of that is covered. And then streets, we have a couple of other random revenue sources, although some of general revenue feeds into that as well. The motor vehicle excise tax and the transportation benefit district, which is a 0.2% sales tax that's levied here in Anacortes. Washington Park, for example, though, is covered almost 100% or sometimes more than 100% by the fees on the campground and other uses out there at Washington Park. In the utility category, we have drinking water, we have wastewater, your sewer department, your solid waste, and your stormwater. Now, the important distinctions here are that the utility user rates can be set based on whatever the costs are. There's no external state law constraint on what we can set utility user fees at. So frequently when we're talking about budget troubles, kind of put utilities over to the side because they can generally pay for themselves. The things that have partial funding, we're not as worried about because they have some other revenue sources, but it can depend. But those items that are in the first column are the ones that are really constrained by sales tax and economic conditions. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. General revenue consists of 3 components. Try that again. 3 components. Okay. Utility tax is our first. So we are allowed to and do levy a tax on certain utilities. And there are some statutory limits that are relatively high. And then there's no limit on the tax rate on sewer, solid waste, stormwater, and water services. So we have some room to maneuver in that area, but the total amount of revenue that we bring in at the city from utility tax is $4.5 million. So it's the smallest of the 3 components of general revenue here. And any increase that we levy there is immediately felt by our residents, right? So if you are paying a higher tax on your utilities, it might as well just be raising your utility rates. The only difference is that the utility tax is general revenue, and so we get to keep it and spend it on whatever we want, whereas the utility rate, the base rate that you're paying for water or for sewer or whatever, that is only allowed to be spent on those utilities. So it's much more constrained. So we have this option. We have generally not gone to the utility tax option, but there's some option there that we could utilize to get a little bit more general revenue to pay for things in the event of an economic downturn. Sales tax is a big spender here, and this varies for sure, because sales tax is based, total revenue for sales tax is based on what your economy is doing. So for instance, I've got 5.5 million here. It has sometimes been, in recent memory, as low as 4.5. It's been as high as 6. But lately, sales tax has been relatively flat, and that's a problem that I'll get into in a minute. Importantly though, if economic activity picks up, sales tax revenue goes up, because it's a rate, you know? So that's pretty important. However, it is not really subject to discretionary adjustments. We can't just roll in there and change the sales tax rate, make it higher to get more revenue. It don't really have that ability under state law except in certain circumstances. And then finally, everybody's favorite is property tax. And currently we bring in $8.5 million with property tax. And very importantly about property tax is that our revenue, the city of Anacortes' revenue from property tax, does not increase because your property valuation goes up. Now we know your property valuation is going to go up because supply is constrained, people want to buy houses here. Your property values are going to go up. When they do, the city of Anacortes gets not one more dollar. Generally people don't believe me when I tell them that, but it is a real constraint that we face because there's no growth due to inflation in property tax revenue to the city, and as you can see, it's more than a third of our total general revenue bucket. The way property tax does get increased, the total revenue to the city, is through new construction. So newly added houses get added to the total amount of property tax that we can collect, but otherwise your property value increase doesn't affect the amount of property tax revenue we bring in. Now, so you can see the import of this on this chart. This chart covers the years 2011 through 2021, so not the recent years, simply because I haven't updated it. I generated it a number of years ago. The recent years would be scarier. So if you look at the bars here, this is the property tax levy. So it has increased over time. If you look in 2011, the property tax levy was close to 4 million. And then in 2021, it was closer to 5.25. And the reason the levy increased, and this is the total amount of money that we receive at the city in property tax, the reason that it increased is because of new construction. Now, there's another thing that we do every year, and that is to increase property taxes by 1%, and that is very minor. I mean, if you do the math, 1% is just not very much, which is why I'm not even talking about it. But the new construction does add to the total amount. This is in nominal dollars, unadjusted for inflation. This is inflation adjusted dollars. And it happens to be in 1982 dollars because of, I don't know why it's in 1982 dollars. That's not important. The point is that the total amount of property tax in nominal dollars and the dollars that you see on the spreadsheet has increased. The amount of property tax revenue to the city in terms of what that property tax revenue, what those dollars can buy, actually decreased a bit from 2011 to 2021. Even though we were adding population, we were adding houses, we were adding new construction. And the revenue picture in the last 3 or 4 years, when we had 21% inflation cumulative over 4 years, is much worse for the city. So this, and here's a graph that shows, what the inflation rates were in those years, and they, got up to 3.5%, but we had, double that. This chart extended over the next several years would show a much worse picture, and if inflation continues to be high, it's going to be even worse going forward. In the macroeconomy, generally, when the economy is growing, and this was the case in 2023, the federal government, the Federal Reserve, raises interest rates. So if the economy is growing too quickly and we end up with inflation, the Federal Reserve raises interest rates in order to tamp down inflation, to get inflation to come back down, to make it more attractive for people to save money instead of spend money. And so that kind of looks like this. Interest rates go up, inflation comes down. But that's in a situation where inflation is a result of a booming economy. What we have in 2025 is inflation probably as a result of current and future tariffs, which is not the result of a booming economy, and may have the result of depressing the economy. And hopefully we don't get to use the word depression too much, but contracting economy is what we had in the last quarter's report, and if we have 2 quarters, that's a recession, 2 quarters of contracting economic growth. And the problem there is you can't use interest rates to lower inflation in that case. You can lower interest rates to try to get the economy going faster, but that may have the result of increasing inflation. Those are bad things. So to recap a little bit, property tax is eroded by inflation. It is increased by new construction. So here's the last one. Our new construction is depressed right now. We are not getting new construction at the rates that you might want to see, at the rates that we need to see in order to deal with the housing problem, and at the rates that we have seen historically in Anacortes. Our new construction is very low, and that's because of high interest rates, principally. So it's been like that for a couple of years as a result of that. It's also as a result, or will be in the future, supply chain disruptions and tariffs. And so that is doubly bad. So it's not a rosy or pretty economic picture or fiscal picture for the city looking into the future. Importantly, Anacortes on your property tax bill is only 17% of the total, so don't blame us for the whole amount. The county is 12%. The port over there is just 2% of your total. And then the school, 23%, and the state levy at 30%. Anacortes used to be down a little bit, but thank you. You passed the public safety levy a couple of years ago, which enabled us to hire 8 more firefighters and 5 more police officers. That was a big, significant increase in the city's portion of your property tax. And that is the one exception to what I just talked about. The only other way that we can really increase property tax is through a vote of the people. Okay, so what is this looking like in terms of the city of Anacortes on the ground? So first of all, we have a number of capital projects. Our wastewater outfall is FEMA funded because we are replacing our wastewater outfall, which is more than a $20 million project, as a result of a natural disaster, a rain event that caused the old one to fail. So FEMA is funding that. That is great, so long as they keep sending us the checks. And so far, that has not been a problem. I've talked to Congressman Larson about it. He thinks that that's not going to be a problem, and let's hope that he's right there. We have asked on the Public Works Committee, which Carolyn Moulton is also on, and Carolyn Moulton is a little modest. Carolyn is a council member, but she's also the mayor pro tem. You might want to keep track of that for the future, Carolyn. But we have asked to change from quarterly billing and reimbursement for FEMA to monthly billing. Takes a little bit more work, a little more staff time, but may be important in case that tap ever gets turned off. Last year, we got a grant from federal funds for a fireboat, which will be a useful addition to our capacity in the fire department. But it's federally funded. You know, we got to order the boat. We got to get the boat built. We got to get the invoice. We got to submit it to the federal government to get reimbursed. So that it's $700,000, I think. That's a big chunk, especially when you just saw what our general revenue looks like. $15-16 million. We expect to get several $1 million or a few $1 million in trail mitigation funds from FEMA. We had a trail washout, and so during a natural disaster, a declared disaster, and so we should get that money, but it's coming from FEMA. And then we have been in discussion with the Samish tribe for a number of years now to get them to apply for FEMA funding for reconstruction of Fidalgo Bay Road. That's probably not very near term, but it's probably a $10-15 million project, and we don't really see a way to pay for that, except through federal funds that way. And of course, the problem is the president just fired the leader of FEMA because he said we should have FEMA. And so that probably doesn't bode well for future projects that rely on federal funding that way. Now, a little bit closer to home, we are working together with the port on an event facility, and that's going to be funded with lodging tax, which is not a federal funding source. That is our own local homegrown funding source. There shouldn't be a problem there, except that Canadian travel to the US is plummeting. It has been for a little while, though, because we don't have the Sydney ferry. And so it's important to look a little bit at the background there. That run was suspended due to availability of boats and crew. We are expecting, and WashDOT and WSF continues to say, that run will get restored in 2030. But it depends on construction of new boats. Not for the Sydney run, but for the rest of the fleet. Those new boats are electric, and they are funded by the Washington Climate Commitment Act. So the problem there is that the headlines indicate that the Trump administration may be going after the ability of states to have their own climate policies, like Washington and California do. And we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen to that. But what we do know is that there is no money in the state budget for new boats except through this money that's coming from the Climate Commitment Act. That is a very important funding source for those new boats. If we don't get the new boats, we don't get full restoration of ferry service, and if we don't get that, we don't get the Sydney ferry back. So that's important for all of our businesses in Anacortes. It's certainly important for our lodging tax revenue. And it's something that we've really had our eye on for a long time. By the way, if you haven't already, I encourage you to go to anacortestosydneyferry.org and sign the petition to the state to make sure that we get that run back. Keep them thinking about it because it's still a long way off. You know, I don't want to leave you with without something about housing. You know, we do rely on a lot of subsidized housing in Anacortes and in Skagit County. And the Trump administration is apparently considering slashing money for federal housing programs. One of the housing projects that we are working on in Anacortes is the reconstruction of the Olsen building. That is not federally funded, but it is funded through our affordable housing sales tax, so it's subject to differing economic conditions. And I want to leave you with a little bit of good news. Apparently, high-speed internet funding program are racist and unconstitutional. It really is just exhausting, isn't it? But we are not getting any of this money already. So we're not too worried about that. And if you don't have the availability of Anacortes fiber internet to your house today, it will probably be arriving there in the next 12 to 18 months.
I've been waiting.
We've been waiting.
So that's all I've got. I want to introduce Commissioner Wesen or Commissioner Bowers, whoever wants to go next.
I want to follow you.
Okay. I'm going to shut off the projector so it's not shining in your eyes.
So our next speaker is Wesen, who's our county commissioner. And I really appreciate you coming because this is not an easy time for you, I know. And a little bit of his background. He's a fourth generation dairy farmer and businessman. 3 generations of extended Wesen family operate an organic dairy and a dairy farm in the Bo Edison area. He met his wife in college and they've been married for 42 years. Very impressive. Be a legend in your time. All right. He's risen as a leadership role in every organization which he has served, beginning in high school. He's had an opportunity to represent and advocate for our agricultural community in both Olympia and Washington, D.C. Worldwide travel has given him a valuable perspective about how our Skagit values and quality of life can be sustained as the community grows and changes. I'm not going to go through all the different things that you've done over the years because it'll take too much time because you're quite accomplished person, so thank you. And I can't remember how long you've been on the council, so you have to let us know.
17 years.
Wow, okay, great. Here you go.
Thank you very much for inviting me over here today. I really do appreciate Ryan's educational process, how the city budget works. And one thing you look at on that, there's a couple things the county doesn't have the ability to do. One thing is utility tax. The counties are not allowed in the state of Washington to have utility tax, so people with cell phones and so forth they don't have a utility tax on that. The other thing is the sales tax numbers. For the county numbers, our numbers are pretty flat. And one thing, it just depends on what's going on in the county. going forward. About 72 or 73% of the county budget is law and justice. So that is the judges, the sheriff's office, the community justice center, the prosecutor, the public defenders. That's a huge chunk of our budget. So, you know, what is the question? What's local government responsible for? And I personally believe law and justice is right up there and some things we want to make sure we're able to handle. So that's one of the things we've been doing over the years. One thing that was asked on this presentation is, what are the federal restrictions or reductions that we have seen so far? Trump has been in since the middle of January, and so far the only thing the county has had, we've had 3 positions that were funded from COVID-19 grant program. So we got money for health department, and so we had a nurse and an immunologist and another individual. So we got a letter that was going to be, we got on the 25th of March, and they said the funding stopped on the 24th. Then we got a letter a week later that said it'll go till the end of June, so the fiscal year. So we gave notice to 2 of those employees, the other one we're moving around. So currently, the only thing we've been affected so far are 2 employees in our health department. And one thing the county commissioners have always done with any of these grants we get, we know that they're short-term, they're a particular time, and the money goes away. So we have been very diligent on not having employees think they have a full-time job. It's a full-time job, but the grant goes away on 2 years or 3 years, whatever the number is. So they have been aware of that when we hire the individuals. So that's the only thing we've actually seen so far. Our budget process, we start in July and August, and we have to pass it by the end of December. And so we go through all the numbers. The county commission has been very conservative in our sales tax revenue. So we guesstimate, like I think this time we guesstimated exactly what we had last year in revenue for 24. We projected for 25, and we're a couple % above that so far. So there's a little cushion there. The other thing is we've done is we look at the costs, the expenses, and we've been very conservative on what those expenses, we've been high on it, so we have a cushion there. So we've come in below what our expense I think we were gonna have. So we've been able to build up a cushion or a fund balance in some of our different accounts and so forth at the county, that we have a little cushion. And so we've been able to do that over the years. I was in office in 09 and 10, and that's when the real estate debacle happened and all the different things happened, and we ended up making some tough decisions then. That time we laid off about 1/3 of our planning department just because we didn't have funding for those kind of things. And so we've been through it before, we just have been very conservative in our numbers. So for what we know right now, we only have those 2 positions that we have laid off, that their grant was gonna run out at the end of June anyway. Ryan went through some of the FEMA grants and so forth. The State Department of Emergency Management has said, be careful with these federal funds, because we don't know if they're gonna be there going forward. And so we have, any of our FEMA programs, we are funding or billing them every month, just like Ryan mentioned. We don't want to have money out there on the table. On the FEMA, we have to have the natural hazard mitigation plan. You have to upgrade every 4 or 5 years. And so we're going through that process, and that's one of the federal funded programs. We don't know exactly what's going to happen there. We've got a position or some staffing money that comes in for the position for the Department of Emergency Management for flood mitigation. So we have a couple, one home wanted to be raised, another one we're going to move out of the flood area. And so those, tentatively, we're still going forward with it, but we don't know for sure if the money's going to come forward. So those are the only things that we know for sure. I think people need to look at the narrative, you know, what is it we're going to, there's a lot of chaos, there's no question about that. I've had the chance to be in Washington, D.C. twice in the last 3 months. And so it's amazing, anytime we go into Congressman Larson's office or Senator Cantwell's office, they're asking us, local citizens, what is it you know on the ground? Because they aren't getting any information either. So that's the thing everybody needs to realize. There's so much narrative, and how much of that narrative is actually what we're gonna see on the ground and how much is actually gonna be reliable in reality. And I'm a little frustrated with the amount of planning some of our staff are doing on what if this goes away, what if that goes away. We can't really plan for things to go away because you don't know for sure. So how much staff time is wasted because of that? Like I said, I was a dairy farmer, and my brothers who run a farm, county commissioner full time. And we've been some up and downs at dairy farm, and you gotta feed the cows and you gotta milk them. Those are things we have to do. The rest of the stuff may be not done. So we have to, as a community, decide what is it we wanna have done in the community. So all of us have to come together, help us prioritize our local budget and what we wanna do. So those are just some of the general things the county's dealing with, and we aren't gonna make big cuts before our budget cycle because we have enough reserve to definitely make it till next year. So hopefully we'll know more for certain by next year. And you know, like Ryan mentioned, the property tax situation, that's a pretty stable revenue source, but it all comes out of your pocket. So we definitely understand. For Skagit County, we can raise 1%. Last year was like $290,000. So that's what it raised. The other issue, things that happened down in Olympia, there's a lot of different bills that were going on, or we don't know how exactly those are going to affect us local. One of the things, there was a bill on case loads for public defenders. The Bar Association did a study, and this is what they need for caseloads for public defenders. And in Skagit County alone, that study said we'd have to have 22 new public defenders. We don't have funds for 22 new public defenders. So those are some of the things that we as county commissioners are gonna have to make some decisions on. Yes, the state says we have to do it, but if we don't have the money, how do we do it? And so, personally, if the state says it's mandatory, the state should fund it. That's just my thought on it. That's about all I have. If you guys want to ask questions, we're done here. I'm more than welcome to listen to you. I've got a couple of printouts of some of the things I just went over. I didn't bring 50 of them, so I've got a few of them. I can make sure that your group has it. Thank you very much.
Oh, here are your glasses. Well, as we can see, there's a lot of, we're not sure, going on at the moment on at least the county and state level. We'll have Bonnie talk about the port. But I do appreciate, you know, how difficult the job is right now for all of our public employers and employees and for our elected officials. So thank you for doing what you're doing. The next person is our Bonnie Bowers, who's our commissioner for the port. And Bonnie had been the chief of police in Anacortes for many years. And when she was asked why she's a commissioner, she said, I care deeply about the economic health of our community, and she's seen the firsthand the impacts of an economic downturn can have on the community, and she wants to see Anacortes remain economically vibrant and diverse. And hoping that there'll be job creation with the port and that the port will continue to grow. So I'm going to turn this over to Bonnie.
Thank you. You know, you're seeing 3 generations here. Ryan had a beautiful presentation. Ron's got some typed notes. I got notes on my phone. Actually, we're the same generation, aren't we, Ron? Yeah, never mind. Thank you very much. The Port of Anacortes port districts are a little bit different from the other branches of government that you've heard about tonight. We're an economic development corporation. We're a municipal corporation. You are the shareholders in that corporation, so we are accountable to you. Our goals at the Port of Anacortes, of course, there's economic development, job creation, and former Commissioner Joe Verdos is out here tonight, and we used to say, jobs, jobs, jobs. Every project we looked at, how many living wage jobs did it bring to Anacortes? Was it a resilient, sustainable industry, and did it fit in our community? So we're still doing that work, but we do have federal grants that impact what we do. And the biggest of our grants that is currently active is an Environmental Protection Agency grant that we were so proud to receive. $67 million, I believe, was the final amount. It's a private-public partnership. We partnered with our marine industries, a boat manufacturer, and a marine service, and another fleet which supplies the tankers at the refinery. They were using the money for hybrid engines on their boat, cleaner, more efficient engines on their big vessels, electric forklifts, different types of lower emission equipment. The port's part of that grant was very small. It was mostly the administrative part and part of our electrification project. We received a letter back in end of January that our grant had been suspended. And so we immediately, like everyone would do, contacted poor old Congressman Larson. And he and Senator Cantwell's office really went to bat for us. The next thing we heard was from a staff member at the EPA who called us and said, please bill out what you've spent so far on your staff time. And none of the purchases had been made yet. That grant is still in flux. We just don't know. And I just want to tell you a short story before I continue on how the climate has changed. We belong to the Pacific Northwest Waterways Association, and once a year we send a delegation to Washington, D.C. to promote transportation over the water, which, by the way, is the cleanest and cheapest way to transport goods. And this year I went as part of that delegation, and we were sitting in an elected official's office, and I won't say which one, and we were talking about this EPA grant. And essentially what we heard from our elected official was, you must change the language in your grant. Don't talk about environmental issues. Talk about jobs. Talk about resiliency. Talk about, economic things. And I made the mistake, I rolled my eyes and went, it's environmental grant, right? And the congressman said, oops, I gave it away. He said, do you want the money or not? And so we were able to re-enter that narrative on that grant. It's still in flux. But we continue to work on those issues because they're important. And we'll continue to work across party lines as much as we have to with other members of Congress to try and tell our story about what we're doing here in our little port. We are very fortunate in that we are a small port. We are resilient. As far as the port, we're a $23 million budget every year, but most of that is what our tenants do when we collect rents on the marine terminal, the marina, of course, the airport, and our upland properties. Pier 2, the pier that really is port operated, we export pearl sulfur and coke from that port pier. And I know most of you know this because most of you have heard me speak before. And that is a partnership with one of our refineries. The pearl sulfur goes to the highest bidder and is re-refined for jet fuel. The coke goes to the highest bidder and is refined for aluminum. Now, historically, the pearl sulfur can go anywhere in the world, but it's gone to Mexico a few times. There's tariffs on Mexico now. The aluminum is produced in Canada. There's tariffs in Canada now. So our local business that we partner with is going to have to find new sources for those. And they're working on them. So that has significantly slowed down the amount of shipments that have been leaving Pier 2. That impacts us dollar-wise as far as our port revenue, which we try to be as solvent as we can every year because we are investing your money in job creation and sustaining those jobs. So we know that we will operate that pier at a little bit of a loss this year. the real victims there are the members of the union, the ILWU, the men and women who load those ships. And that's just not at the port of Anacortes. We see the port of Seattle has seen a decline. They did see a bump in April, which they figure was the pre-tariff boom. And then they have seen a decline, as has the port of Everett. And one other port that has really been affected is the port of Kalama. If you're not familiar with Kalama, they bring soybeans and grains by rail from the heartland of America, and they are exported by barge. They are a break bulk barge port like we are. They've seen a big downturn as well. The other folks that are really impacted by this are our tenants. You know, our tenants are our seafood processors, and both on-port property and off-port property. We catch a lot of fish, a lot of crabs, a lot of sea urchins. A lot of those products come through our docks every year. Many are fresh market, sold right here off the docks. And that's the end of the story for those with us. But the other ones are processed here in town and shipped. And the market for a lot of those is Asia. That's a concern as well. We know that the amount of ships that come into our area, and y'all can look this up on your little app about shipping in the Guaymas Channel, are Chinese flag vessels. And of course they were going to have the highest tariff. That has changed somewhat. It changes daily, which makes it really hard to monitor. So you can imagine for a small business who's trying to order materials like aluminum, like components for hybrid motors, those type of things, it's very, very difficult for our maritime industry. The other thing that concerns us is, if we are in fact in an economic downturn, we have a tremendous business in Anacortes in boat sales. In fact, we have our boat and yacht show coming up at the marina. Feel free to come down and ogle the boats. Buy one or two if you'd like. The sales tax goes to Ryan and the community. And I don't know, you probably get some of that too, don't you, counties guy? Yeah. So when there's an economic downturn, people are thinking hard about, do I need this boat this year? Do I need this automobile this year? Do I need to go on this cruise? And by the way, we are a cruise port. We have the American Cruise Line comes here 37 days, I think, this year so far. And those are folks on vacation. And a lot of folks are thinking twice about taking their vacation this year. So those are real issues that we see happening. We're not the only port. Besides Kalama, I wanted to mention the port of Benton, which is Benton County, Tri-Cities area. They are a tremendous agriculture hub for grains, and those grains then are shipped down the Columbia and out to sea as well. And they are very, very concerned about tariffs. When those grains sit and aren't transported, they are at risk of rot, and we're very concerned about that, as is Port of Kalama. Our pearl sulfur and coke, they can leave it at the refinery, they can store it for a bit, but we are concerned about those materials. So we continue to watch the situation. I'm happy that we're resilient. I'm happy that our local employers are keep it on, and we'll wait and see. We have a reprieve for a little bit now, and I know there's a lot of shipping going on right now, or a lot of things trying to get on the log books to get over to different countries before the tariffs kick in again. So that has been difficult. Back to the grant situation, the only other grant we have, and this is near and dear to my heart, is we still have our port infrastructure grant to rebuild T-Dock, which is where our local fishing fleet lands with their catch. We do $14 million worth of revenue our fishermen do over that dock every year. That's an important piece of infrastructure. That grant is still good. So we're very, very pleased about that. Now, the cost of materials when we start construction on that dock in a few years have gone up significantly, and what we originally budgeted for that dock, we won't have to raise your taxes, but we will have to be dipping into some other capital projects to achieve that. But that's our next project that I see coming to fruition, that and some other things at the Marine Terminal. As far as how this should affect our project with the city that Brian and I are both, and Caroline are so excited to have, that's a great partnership to have that event space down at the marina. We should be able to continue with that, hopefully. Little bit about the state of Washington. It was an interesting congressional, or an interesting legislative session for us. You know, something we care very, very deeply about at the Port of Anacortes is the environment, and we have had many successful environmental cleanup projects over the years. We seek to leave things better than we found them in some of our properties that we acquire. And the legislature this year, because of the budget deficit, took millions, tens of millions of dollars, I think it was 60 in all, out of the Kamado toxic cleanup funds. Those are the funds that we use to clean up projects like Seafarers Park that used to be, you know, the old mill. We still have the Log Pocket project, which still needs some remediation and cleanup. So we are a little concerned about that affecting our cleanup projects going forward. And we'll continue to monitor that. But as you know, the Commissioner Wesen said, day to day, our staff is still doing the work. They're still doing their job. We're still fixing the docks. We're still, you know, cleaning up the seals off the docks and getting the boats in and out. And our tenants are still working hard. Cortland Rope just expanded into the transit shed. 6 new jobs immediately and more to follow. We're very excited about that. They have a partnership with a company that they hope to be able to deliver those maritime lines that they make right on the boat and rig the boats right there at the pier, which would, again, add some value to that partnership. So we're really excited about that. Not trying to be doom and gloom, but cautiously optimistic, I think, is what I am. I'm cautiously optimistic. We did get through 2009 and 2010. You know, that was a very difficult time, as the Commissioner said. We at the police department, this is what inspired me to run for office in the first place, is that I never thought you would cut police and fire, because we were police and fire, we were essential services, and of course every community had to cut back on police and fire at that time. So this is concerning, but I think we can find a way forward.
What I'd like to do now is we could have comments, questions. I'll have people raise their hand and bring the microphone to you. Ask people to please state their name and stand up when you're asking a question so people can hear you. A lot of people don't like to use the mic, but it's really helpful for the rest of us to hear what you have to say. And the other thing is, this doesn't work. You've got to hold the mic up to your face. You know, think of how you see singers on TV with the mic practically in their mouth. So it's kind of weird for the rest of us, but it works. So what I'll do is, are there any questions? Okay, here we go.
I'm Pat Gardner. I want to make a comment about the port. Entertaining. I go down to by T-Dock and sit at the bench and watch them with the fish unloading and loading with the cranes and everything. It's quite interesting walking past Anthony's, go down and sit at the bench and watch. So on a nice day, sit and watch that and the seagulls. On another note, I didn't realize this, but on I don't know, it was CNN or some national program years ago, Cortland Lumber, or Cortland Cord over here, was on a big program. And it's known worldwide, and it's one of the most famous cord places, and we're very proud to have it there. I tried to get a tour there years ago, and they said due to issues, no. So you can go by and peek through the doors there. But Cortland, I mean, if you're not aware of it, they make the cords or the ropes or whatever, the lines to the, like aircraft carriers down, the massive things. They're quite an industry for us, so we should be very proud of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, here you go. Hold on, let me get you the mic.
For the Port Commissioner and, beg pardon, Mike Hall? Mike Hall standing up. For the Port Commissioner and anybody else who might know. So about the slag, the coke and the sulfur, you know, I was amazed at those trucks coming through. I didn't know what they were. I thought they were taking it to the sewage plant or something. But I saw what it was. What I'm wondering is if they're not being able to make as many shipments, are we concerned about having a backup of that? Because they probably don't have a lot of holding area. And that's, you know, probably something that has to be bermed and, you know, waterproofed and stuff like that. So is there anybody who's going to kind of like monitor if there's too much of a buildup that, like the state EPA or something? And that's what I'm just wondering.
They are transporting it to, you know, to places where it can be held, and they are finding people that can recycle it in the United States. It just goes by truck now.
Okay, good. I'm glad it's not going to all build up.
Good afternoon. My name's Brock Ward. We're a fairly liberal group here, and it's a small, but it's a fairly positive group. Is there anything that we can help, either at a county, city, or port level, that you folks would like us to do for you?
Good question, thank you.
Yeah, like I said, I was back in Washington DC a couple times so far this year, and you know, you have to understand, you know, 435 Congress people back there, plus 100 senators. And if it is a legislative passed agreement, the courts are going to go through, this is Representative Larson mentioned yesterday, the courts are going to go through the process and get things figured out. But if it was a presidential order, then that could change, because if it wasn't law passed by Congress and signed by the president, then it's up to the president to change it. And so that's what the issues we're dealing with. And the same thing with Washington State. I mean, we've got our 98 House members and 49 different senators, and so they're the ones that deal with things that come to the state, and the governor has to sign it. And one thing I didn't mention was the Medicare issues and so forth. There's a lot of funding that comes through. One thing, the ambulance system, the Med-Aid, what do they call it? There's state Medicare money that comes for the ambulances to help the cities get funding for the ambulance service. So that's one thing definitely concerned about. We don't know exactly what that's going to do in the future.
From the city perspective, I don't want to get into much about you know, what is happening at the federal level, but because there's so much that can be said about that. But in terms of what we're doing at the city level, the upshot that I hope was not too subtle in the presentation is that tough times are ahead. So when we go into our budget process at the conclusion of this year, it probably would be beneficial to us if you participated in that and said, these are the things that are most important to us. These are the things we want to see preserved. Some other things may have to go away or be mothballed. Some things, you know, like the Port City Event Center may be considered by some to be a nice to have and not an essential, but it's funded by a revenue source, so we can't really spend on a lot of other things. So those are always complicated issues to figure out, but we don't need you to figure out those complications. That's what you pay us to do. What we need to hear from you is what's important to you. You know, tell us what's the most important thing. You know, is it public safety? Is it you know, making sure the mayor's office is fully furnished? You know, give us your values, and we'll try to reflect them that way. And then it's really up to somebody other than me and us. It's really up to the rest of you, though, to figure out that problem at the federal level. It's just that the rate of change, assuming you wanted to make the changes that the federal government is making, the rate of change is too fast. And all of the local governments, so many manufacturers, small businesses, big businesses have investment-backed expectations for agencies to continue to exist and for funds to still be available. And so that really throws a wrench in their plans and works. And it's gonna have a significant negative effect on the economy at large. But that's for the voters generally to figure out, rather than, I think, us elected officials. We're trying to stay really focused on what our jobs are and running our city, our port district, and our county.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Commissioner Wesen, and my name is Sally Hill, and I'd like to ask what you can tell us about threats to the Meals on Wheels program.
Sally definitely understands the Meals on Wheels program. We're in the senior center for many, many years. Really appreciate all the work you did. The Meals on Wheels program is, we do have some state funding that comes in for that, but most of it is county funding that goes into that, so that's out of our general fund to do it. We rely on a lot of volunteers to make sure that food is delivered out there on a daily basis. The department has come to us and looked at the budget. The kitchen is getting up to the capacity of the number of meals they're serving every day, and also the cost and the capacity of the kitchen. Should we look at frozen meals or hot meals 3 days a week or 2 days a week? So those are some of the different options they've brought to us. Skagit County is one of the only counties in the area or state that still delivers hot meals. Definitely, I think it's really important to do that. I've gone on several different ride-alongs with the people and meeting the recipients who receive the food and so forth. So we are looking at it, and I think it's really important just to have that check-in on a daily basis on individuals who get those meals. So commissioners have not made a decision on what they want to do. It's all going to depend on the budget and how to handle it, but we would like to keep it the hot meals. Definitely was on the table a year ago or 2 years ago now on what to do with it, but we chose to keep the hot meals going forward. So.
And is there not federal money involved there?
There's a little, but not major. It comes through some of the other agencies and so forth. It comes, it's the adult, their senior adult programs. So there is a little bit of federal money, but not that much.
And I'd like to make a suggestion. The other gentleman's comment about how the community can help both the city and the county and the port is both the County Meals on Wheels program and the City Senior Center program both have opportunities for tax deductible donations.
Tax and volunteers.
And
They all need great
volunteers,
volunteers.
absolutely.
One of the issues we're having is Mount Vernon Senior Center is a county-owned facility. It's 90 or 100 years old. It's right next to the fairgrounds. We've had some issues with it, sewer pipes plugged up and so forth, and so we've had, how much do we spend on bringing that up, or how do we help Mount Vernon decide they need to fund the building like all the other cities in the county have done? So we're meeting with them later this month.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I'm wondering about tourism too, because it's, my name's Carson. With the Canadian tourism going away, and it's just something that I know I am not that fond of. It's not like, let's bring more tourists to Anacortes. But if it meant being able to pay for things that are really important to us, and it was easy money, and we have just such a beautiful area, if there's ways to maybe even invest a little bit that would bring in money in that regard. I'm just wondering if there's some thoughts about that. Because it just seems like there are some untapped things, you know, like especially with the natural areas, like mountain biking course, or, you know, just various things like that, that would take some investment, but could end up bringing a whole new group of people to the area. Yeah. Thanks.
I have a lot of thoughts on tourism. I used to think it was really a pain because for enforcement, the amount of revenue and sales tax that the tourism brings into this community is outstanding. We can fund a lot of things like this library. and other city services, because we have folks coming through, doing their shopping at Safeway, the busiest Safeway in the state of Washington. They're so proud of that. Parking their boats in the port, using the RV parks that we have on the island in city limits and off city limits, using Washington Park, using the facilities that we have. The Downtown Business Alliance is doing a lot to attract tourism in the city, as is the Chamber. State tourism funds have been cut somewhat, so that's a little bit more challenging for them. And they've dedicated LTAC funds now for the event center for future use, which is also something that we think will attract some out-of-town dollars. I know there is one group that's organizing a walk Anacortes in September. I don't have a lot of details on it, I just heard about it, so that's something to look forward to. But that would bring in individuals who are not going to be impacting as so much traffic-wise as they are using our forest land, perhaps using the trails in Anacortes and touring our downtown. So tourism is a good thing. It's hard to share our beautiful community, but it's good for the community to share.
And to tag onto that a little bit, the Port City Event Center, we're hopeful would be able to attract small conferences, attorneys who need to have continuing legal education credits and want to spend some money in our downtown as well. We really think that there's an opportunity there. Also completing some of our other capital facilities, including like our Wemos Channel Trail, might be able to provide more incentive for people to stay in Anacortes while they're on their way to the San Juan Islands. Maybe somebody would like to start a bike rental business downtown Anacortes and bike out the Wemos Channel Trail and get on the ferry. The more opportunity we have to capture that, I think, is great for Anacortes. I also completely understand the concern about tourism and having too much tourism. In no way at all do we want to become a tourist destination community. I think we want to be a whole community that is a great place for tourists. Because tourists add to the ability of us to have restaurants that are otherwise beyond the scale necessary or available to us with 18,000 population. So that's a great thing. But we don't want to become reliant exclusively on tourism. We don't want to be a Leavenworth or a community like that is so exclusively reliant on it. So yes, let's leverage it and let's do everything that we can to boost tourism within reason and get the benefit of it without getting the negatives.
Yeah, a couple years ago, we passed the Tourism Bureau that was passed, and so if you looked at the Tulip Festival and so forth, there's a lot more advertising that was on there. Kristen Kelts is the director of that organization now. They're having a tourism get-together or discussion coming on the next week or so in Mount Vernon in the library. So there is a lot of more information. They did a lot of advertising and so forth on the web and also out of the area and so forth. So they were able to show that their money that they spent was very successful bringing in people in the community, especially during the Tulip Festival. So Kristen Kelts at the Skagit County Skagit Tourism Bureau is what they're doing. So they've done a really good job. And that's a tax on anybody who stays in the hotel for, that's $2 a night if the hotel is over 40 people or 40 beds or 40 rooms. So there's a tax that gets charged on those out of locals that come to the community.
Pat Gardner. My thought regarding tourism. I do a newsletter for my community that I live in on activities throughout Skagit and Anacortes. And there is so much out there that tourists come to. Let's say, for example, we have the Arts and Crafts Fair here in August. We get a lot of out-of-towners that come that might want to come back for a short visit. We have the Oyster Run in the fall, which brings in tourists and bikers and stuff that they might want to come back to. Mount Vernon has that wonderful new fairgrounds that's drawing down there at the end of Taylor Street into Mount Vernon, right? And that's beautiful, and they have all kinds of events there that brings out of town people, not just to Mount Vernon, but to Anacortes and around. There are the airport at the Heritage Flight Museum. If you know about that, they got fly days on Saturdays, memberships. Well, that brings in tourism. There's a lot out there, that does bring in tourism, but we need a few more dollars there. But anyway, I just wanted to
Are there any other questions that people have? One of the things to remember, there's a lot of options, Sally was pointing out, and there's a lot of option to help volunteer. And it's something that people need to think about in terms of how you spend your extra time and what you enjoy doing. And this community, and I'm sure throughout the county, there's lots of opportunity for people to help others. And that's something to kind of think about, especially when there's concerns about budgets and money. The volunteers can really make a difference in many of these different organizations and groups. Anyone else have anything that they want to add? Okay, there's a person, hold on.
My name is Carolyn Gatley, and I help out with the Democratic office. And that's one thing that we all can do. They need to have people come, answer the phone, give directions, and give information. Another thing that is kind of, maybe not so nice, is let your Republican people in Olympia, in the federal government, know that they need to get out of Dodge.
Okay. A little partisan conversation here. Any other comments? Well, this has been a very enlightening meeting. Thank you to all three of our speakers. And I want to thank them for continuing on in public service at this very challenging time. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Our pleasure.
So I think it's out, but I want to.
Really interesting.